Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. This is Harika. So in this video, I am going to talk about Orchestrator API calls and what are the different activities that we have in order to do these API calls. So in previous video, I have shown you how we can perform the authorization for that particular, API that we are endpoint that we are accessing using Postman. Okay, so if you're not sure or if you want to understand about it, please do watch that first part. That will give you enough understanding. So with that much knowledge, we are going to see how we can perform these activities in the studio. Okay, so in this video, I'm going to talk about why we have to choose a certain activity over the other based on your requirement or your prerequisites or constraints that you have in the project. So first of all, I will take you to the studio and I'll show you what are these two different activities I am talking about. So for that, let me go to studio. So I'll just share my screen. Okay, so here I am in my studio. I'm going to first showcase you the orchestrator HTTP request and okay, let me take this new sequence. Okay, so here I'm having HTTP request. Okay, and the other activities. So once after you pull the HTTP request, you can see here you have to provide in the endpoint, which is where the server, we have to get the response from. So you have to provide the endpoint, and if you have any certificates or passwords for that, you have to provide in the values over here. These are the different methods that this endpoint would support. So basically, what is your requirement, like get, post, pull, or whatever is your requirement? Based on that, you have to provide in the request methods. And we have parameters, bodies, headers, and whatever the things that you wanted to provide in that, you can just add it over here. And if you have any authentication, like let's say simple HTTP or auth 1 or auth 2, you can just provide in here, and you have to provide those particular values. So that's one thing about HTTP request. And if you just see here, the body of the HTTP request can be sent over here, and what format it is, you can just change it, like whether it's an XML or it's a JSON or whatever the body type format, you can just change it over here, and it will provide the response. This is the result. Okay, so this provides a response here. So based on the format of the response that you get, you can actually tune the response. So let's say if it's a JSON, so basically this will be a string, so you have to convert that based on your requirement. So if you see here, I'm just giving output. Just go here to the variables. So if you see, it's of the type string. So based on the format of it, you have to use a deserialized JSON or deserialized JSON array. So if you're not sure how to do that, I have explained it very clearly in the video of API automation. You can just check it out over there. And after that, if you have any authentication, you can just provide in the username, secure password, and password. So this is something about HTTP request on a high level understanding. So let's take how orchestrator HTTP request would look like. So unlike HTTP request, we don't have to provide any authentication or any username or password for the orchestrator HTTP request, because this will be performing the actions on orchestrator API directly with the help of the connection that we have established. So what's one prerequisite in order to use orchestrator HTTP request is it has to be connected. The robot has to be connected to the orchestrator where you wanted to perform these API calls. So if that connection is not established, you cannot perform these calls. So that's why there is no need of any authentication that you have to provide in case of orchestrator HTTP. So let's say if you're running multiple robots or multiple on a multiple machines, so in that case it has to be connected to the particular orchestrator where you wanted to perform the API calls. All the machines has to be connected. So that's one thing. And let's look into the properties that it's differing from HTTP request. So if you just observe, the endpoint here is, in case of HTTP request, it is a complete endpoint, right? You have to provide the whole endpoint, the URL, whole URL you have to provide. But in case of orchestrator HTTP request, it's a relative endpoint. That means it's not a complete endpoint, because you just have, you are already connected to the orchestrator, right? So you just have to provide the relative endpoint that would do the function. Okay. And the JSON payload is the body, whatever you wanted to send, that body you can send. And the method, just like how we have in HTTP request, these are the different methods it supports. And these are the headers that it gives. It's basically an output. JSON response is just like, so let's say if you see here, I'm just giving one variable here, and if you see, it's also of type string. Okay. So, and the status code, just like if you know, forget, it's a success, it's 200 is the status code for success, and 201 is the status code for if it's a created. So like that, based on the status code, you can check what kind of response you're getting from that particular API. Okay. So these are the things about orchestrator HTTP request. So what's the main constraint here is, for this you have to, your robot must be connected to the orchestrator, only then you can perform the API calls. For this you don't have to you know, connect it, the robot need not be connected to the orchestrator, but still it works. But you have to make sure that you have to get it authenticated. So how you can get that done? So in the previous video where I have shown you using the Postman, let me just show you that. Let me go to the Postman. Okay, so if you see here, the access token that I have got from the Postman, right? So this access token I will be using. I will be using this particular access token to make sure that I establish or I authenticate that particular orchestrator. So that's how we can actually make sure the you know, the robot could able to access that particular orchestrator. So that's about HTTP and orchestrator HTTP request. There's one more thing that you have to consider when it comes to orchestrator HTTP request is all the roles. Like let's say when you're doing some function like, you know, put or post, okay, you should have certain permission to do that. So let's say I'm going to my tenant. So here there's a particular thing called roles. Okay, for let me create one role. If I wanted to access something with respect to folders, okay, so with respect to folders, if I want to access something, then in that case I should have let's say if I want to create a folder, then I should be having this create enabled for my robot. Okay, so only then through an API I can do that particular action. So we have to make sure when you're using orchestrator HTTP request, these roles in order to do that particular action has to be enabled, only then you can perform this. So that's the constraints with respect to orchestrator HTTP request. And there is something with respect to HTTP request is you have to do the authorization and you should get that access token, only then you can access that particular orchestrator through API calls. So this is about these two different activities that you can use in order to do orchestrator API calls. So I will be making a video or a series on both of the activities, like using HTTP request, how we can perform, or using an orchestrator HTTP request, how we can perform all the API calls. No, so based on your requirement, you can choose whatever is feasible for you, because in most of the cases, or in let's say if a client is not okay to provide the permissions to the robots for creation and editing, then in that case, then definitely you have to go for a HTTP request. So based on the requirement of the client or the business, you can just choose whatever the activity that you wanted to go ahead for. So just as in a small demo, I'd like to show you here. So if you see, my orchestrator is not connected, right? My robot is not connected to the orchestrator. So now if I am just running this file, so basically this file, let me go to studio. Yeah, so basically this XAML I'm using to create a particular, folder, or to get the users. Sorry, this is used to get the users. So if you see here, the message shows orchestrator information is not available. First thing, please check if UiPath robot service is started. That means you're not connected to the orchestrator to do this particular action. So what I'm going to do here, let me connect it to the orchestrator. So it's connected. So here I can say it got connected. So now if I just execute the same workflow, it should be getting me the all users that are there in this particular folder. So if you see, these are my users. So it has got me the data, right? So this is one main prerequisite for using the orchestrator HTTP request. So in going forward in the next videos that I'm going to do on HTTP request and also orchestrator HTTP request, I'm going to show every step by step how you can recreate for doing the API calls using different activities, both of the activities. So I hope this will be useful for you. If you want to if you want to understand more about these videos, please do like the videos and also subscribe to my channel. That will help me grow. Thank you so much for watching.